It's really exciting because you all touched on a lot of things that we're going to cover today. The premise of the priority sale is really about getting your prospects' attention, establishing trust, creating urgency to act. So ultimately shortening the sales cycle and driving margin in the sale by communicating your real impact to where they want to pay more for your services, or your solutions. So a great topic then for today is to kind of give you a little bit of an understanding of what it's going to look like today. I'm going to start briefly kind of going through some information just about, our beliefs and why the priority sale. I'm going to move as quickly through that as possible because I want to spend as much time today with you all in the workshop format. So we're going to have the kind of initial introduction. We're going to have a workshop on your unique value. I'm going to break you into some smaller groups just to kind of help the conversation go quicker. We'll come back together. I'll explain the priority sale framework, and then you'll go back into your groups and work on your pitches. So we're going to try to maximize our time together workshopping, minimize time presenting. I do want to apologize in advance. This presentation has a lot of animation and I don't have a clicker. So I'm going to be clicking a lot, and hopefully it'll go smoother without that. So anyway.
Are you distracted if we take notes? Or you?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
You called it the priority framework?
The priority sale framework. Yeah, priority sale. So why we do this? So what we've observed is that in the last several years, and probably way longer than that, what we've been seeing in the sales and revenue, in the sales and marketing functions, right, in the revenue functions, is that bigger and bigger budgets are out there, more technology, more people, all the bells and whistles, more ad spend, you name it, right? Those budgets have been ballooning. But ultimately, that's created so much noise in the market that access to your prospects is getting harder and harder to get, right? We're all inundated. You guys live it. Inboxes are flooded. LinkedIn is flooded. Voicemails are flooded, right? Like there's so much noise out there that you're pulling farther and farther away from sellers. And so getting access to your buyers is harder than ever. But influencing your buyers is even harder because we're all using the same tools to market and sell to our customers. So we all act and sound the same, and that confuses our buyer. So we really have lost that connection. And what that's ultimately doing, especially in the sales and marketing function, but across the entire company, is it's eroding your margins. And so what's happening now is companies are faced with a decision, right? How do they fight against this? And we really see three primary ways that companies can fight against this trend when it comes to their margin. The first way is, and let me explain above the line and below the line margin so this graph makes a little more sense. We think of above the line margin as margin that is driven in the sale, which is how high can you sell your solution to get a net off of whatever that cost of sale is. And below the line margin is really about your operating expenses, right? How you trim back to kind of reduce that expense. So if your revenue is flat or even declining, you're hopefully able to try to protect your margin through that operational efficiency. So first option is living with lower margins, right? And that's a real option. What that ultimately means is that you're not going to have a lot of cash to reinvest in the business, right? Your bottom line is shrinking. So with the inability to invest in growth and anything that you need, equipment, you name it, your competitors now have an opportunity, if they're eking you out on margin, to erode your market share by directly competing in that arena. So your second option is to keep cutting. And we have kind of the lean line here, which is really like where you should be operating if you've leaned out to the most efficient place. So now if you keep cutting, you've got a quality control issue most likely, like your product or service, the quality of it has diminished. And so that also gives your competitors an opportunity to swoop in and steal your market share. So then lastly, the third option, which most companies don't even consider, is focusing on creating more margin in the sale, focusing on getting your buyer to pay more for your solution so that you can optimize margin and have cash to reinvest in the business, maintain or improve your quality. And now you start stealing market share from your competitors. So I want to tell you a little bit about our belief system. So we believe that the biggest threat you face right now is becoming a commodity, right? We all feel it, right? There's so much competition out there and we all look and sound the same, at least to our buyer. Second issue that you're facing is that, especially in the enterprise, if you're selling to enterprise, decisions are now made by these large committees. There's a lot of stakeholders and they all care about different things. And then lastly, because your buyer has stepped away, they're doing all their own research. They're figuring out what it is that they should be prioritizing, who could help them with that. And they come to you at the very end of their buying journey. So they've done all their research. They think they know what you sell. It's highly competitive and your margins get compressed. So what we see this doing is driving a race to the bottom on price, squeezing your margins. We call these kind of three primary issues, the three deadly C's: commoditization, compressed selling time, and consensus decision-making. And as we've seen these trends continue to exacerbate, we see that sales teams really haven't modified their approach, and they are really unprepared and ill-equipped to fight this fight and protect your margins. So what if you could change this, right? What if you could get out of that vicious cycle of compressed margins, selling to your buyer at the very end of their buying journey, and figure out who your ideal prospect is, how to reach them, how to influence them before they've even started shopping, right? This is how you maximize your margin and protect your business. So with the priority sale, we've developed a framework that has a unique approach and a set of skills and tools that really do teach whoever is selling in your organization to fight against those three deadly C's and drive more margin in the sale. So it starts, and what we're going to work on today is understanding how to handle what we call the 2 moments of truth in the buyer journey. The first moment of truth, which is inevitable, happens when they reach us at the very end of their buying journey. So that's that end of the buyer journey. They've already considered all of their options. They've already made solving this problem a priority. And now they're considering you and other lookalike competitors, if you will, at least in their mind, right? So your margin is compressed. You have very little influence. So what your sellers need to understand is that the human brain makes decisions in a very prescribed way, right? Since the dawn of time, most sellers sell to the rational brain. They show up touting like your benefits, your features, all of these logical things that make sense, right? They do. However, humans make decisions differently, at least in terms of how we establish priorities. So the first part of our brain that actually responds and connects when we're faced with new information, just really as we go about our day-to-day, is the primitive brain, right? That's the part of your brain that is that fight or flight mode, right? Its entire purpose is to preserve your survival, right? It is focused on keeping you alive. So what it does is it detects threats to your survival, right? And that is how the brain establishes priorities. Humans will always prioritize eliminating a threat over any sort of incremental gain or benefit, truly. So if you're bringing a real threat to them that they can connect with and that they believe in, you become a priority. And so when your sellers are in that kind of end of the buying journey, when a buyer comes to you or your sellers at the very end of their buying journey, it's still important that you think about how neuroscience applies to their decision-making. And what you need to understand and be able to communicate is what your real impact is to them. You want to be able to connect it to a threat, and you want to be able to really articulate how you're uniquely positioned to solve and make this threat go away and create this beautiful end state, right? And now the first moment of truth is that priority sale. So it's up here. It's before your buyers are shopping, right? And so the goal here is to understand who your ideal prospects are, what threat you eliminate, and how to communicate to them. There's 3 questions here: why this, why now, and why you. So why this is making sure they understand that this pain, whatever it is, has a real imminent threat. They need to act. So why now this threat isn't going away? And in fact, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger every day. So solving this now, moving fast, is what's going to help them. And then obviously why you goes back to that original question. What is your unique impact that is going to help them? Okay, so when we think about finding your real impact, I want you to think about a few questions when we go through this exercise. So we want to break out of this apples to apples comparison, right? We want to break out of sounding the exact same as our competitors. So when we are delivering our pitch, when we are sharing our unique value, can your prospect instantly connect to a priority, right? So do they truly understand that what you're solving for eliminates a threat for them? Don't make them infer anything, right? You know, most sellers are like, yeah, but they understand why this feature or benefit solves this problem for them. No, they don't. And in fact, if you haven't even become a priority to them, they're probably not even paying attention to you. And then also think about what your competitors sell the opposite, right? If you're like, oh my gosh, we have the best service, we're the fastest, like all of those generic things, your competitors are probably saying the exact same thing. We have the best people, right? Would they sell the opposite? We have the worst people, the worst. We are so slow. We are so inefficient, right? No. So we really want to think about what it is we're saying, what it is we're pitching, and make sure we're not saying the same thing as everybody else. So that is where we ultimately truly find our unique impact. Before I show you the framework, I'm going to give you a couple of client examples of how this came about or manifested. Actually, I'll show you the framework first. So when you go through the exercise of finding your real impact, where you start, and this is okay, when we get into our breakout groups, don't be embarrassed. That's how you sell today. Because most of us do, right? We got all these features and benefits. It's so great, right? Just remember, like, that is not engaging the primitive brain. So when you can't get people's attention, right, you're likely not saying the right thing that's going to truly get them to lean in and listen. So we're going to work this backwards, right? We're going to start with, okay, yeah, here are the benefits and features and solutions that we're saying today when we pitch to our customers. Then you want to ask yourself, so what? Why should they care? Why does that matter? What does it actually do? What does it solve? Great. Go one level deeper. Ask, so what again? Why should that matter? Why is that important? What does that help? Right? And then ultimately it's a so that statement, which is where you find your real impact. Because that feature or benefit, if you go 3 levels down, usually you're really starting to connect with why should your prospect even care? And so I will show you a couple examples now. All right, so we have a client who manufactures reflective pigment that goes into paint, and really, you know, it's an additive that, as they said, reflects 98.1% of sunlight. That's awesome. So what, right? Why should I care? Well, so that your buildings stay cooler on hot days and in hotter environments. Okay. So what? So your products won't evaporate. Okay, now we're understanding. There's a why here, right? This reflective pigment really helps companies like dairy farms, like distilleries, right? So that your milk yield improves. So that less evaporation of your bourbon comes from your barrels. So that boosts your production. So then when you think about who's your ideal prospect, well, looking for the person who is at the dairy farm and at the distillery, who's focused on improving milk yields, who understands the value of that, who's focused on producing more bourbon at lower costs, right? So that's the question you want to ask, because that's your unique value. Another example, Fanless Chargers. Okay, so Fanless Chargers, this is a company that manufactures chargers to go on these hospital carts, right? All hospitals need those carts, commodity. So the question is, okay, our new procedure cart has a fanless charger. Great. So what? Why do we care? Oh, so the particles won't spread or circulate through the operating room. That sounds pretty good, but so what? so that you're not reinfecting the patient during a procedure. Okay, that really seems important. And what is that outcome? So that you're reducing reinfection rates and ultimately improving your patient satisfaction scores. So you're safer for patients. And so who cares about that? Well, it's the person inside of the hospital system whose goal or whose objective is to eliminate reinfection rates, or who's responsible for improving patient satisfaction scores and ensuring the highest patient satisfaction scores in the city. So this kind of makes sense, right? You go from something pretty generic that might, in your mind, have wide appeal, right? But now you're getting down to who is that ideal prospect, that actual person, that actual position inside of the company that's your prospect, that's going to care about the unique impact you have on their business, right? And we can all imagine what the threat is of high patient reinfection rates. So just walking around the room, I heard a few common themes, and this is totally typical, which is, we save time, we save money, all of these things, right, that every business cares about. What we're trying to accomplish is understanding why they care about it, right? Because there is usually an end goal. You save money, okay, why does that even matter, right? What are you doing with the money you saved? Or if you're driving more cash to the bottom line, what is the goal for that money, right? Because that is really the why. Save time, save things. So why? If you have time savings, what can you now repurpose that additional time you have to do, right? So we're trying to go one layer deep. You guys were getting there though. Does anyone want to share? I'd love to have at least a couple people share before we work on the framework.
Yeah, we've got some good ones.
Yeah.
What do you want to go with? No. Do you mind?
I think yours, yeah.
All right. So, what do you do? How you're different? We do whole home and backup with renewable energy. Solar. You can save more money because you have more efficient equipment, and you'll have whole home backup. Solar. You'll have safety, cost savings, and security, so that if the power goes out, you don't use the power. And you can also kind of a piece to the green energy process, right? And then so that if the power goes out, the home can literally run itself on renewable energy. It's good for the earth.
What else?
And then homeowners who work from home or have medical equipment where it's critical that they're not losing.
So your business doesn't skip a beat, right?
Or your heart.
Or your heart does. Oh my God, we have a tagline for you. So your business or your heart doesn't skip a beat. That is good.
Or more practical, it was like, if the power goes out and you have to throw out all the food from the freezer.
Oh.
That seems a little more like that could happen more than
Right.
like somebody's heart skipping.
Right, but when you think about being very targeted, who you're going after people who work from home, or maybe business owners or who work from home, or people that have medical equipment. That narrows your market, and you have a really impactful message for that. So I love that. It's another good one to go. Yeah.
Been so on electric, been so dependent on it, and our grids are browning out all the time, right? So your business is like, wait, I'm tied to that grid, where people are like, oh, the grid's always on, the power goes out once a year. Well, Boulder goes out once a week.
Yeah.
We've
done a lot of homes up the hills in Boulder where they're like, it got windy, so they shut us off.
That's right.
Yeah, I was just saying up at Breckenridge, same thing.
Yeah.
When you're doing construction, you have no power, the day ends, right? So,
All right, does anybody else want to go?
You go ahead. Yeah. Looking back to our notes. Thank you for that. All right, cool. So, like I've got Teamix. So who are we? Application modernization, digital transformation, outsourcing software solutions. So why us and how are we different? We have global teams, global reach. We can lower the cost of application development. high deliverability and 100% success rate since we started as a company. So what? You can trust us to actually deliver results that you see quickly, increase your efficiency, and make the business more effective. So what? You get software built so that you can scale better and grow your company more effectively and efficiently, so that you can compete in your own market and your own vertical better.
Yeah, and competition's a real issue. Now think about, why is being able to compete important?
Because if you're not competing, someone else is
Right.
taking your
Business livelihood.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's an even deeper emotional connection to the business livelihood.
Oftentimes your own individualism. From a CIO perspective, you've just been hired and you're trying to make impact changes.
Yeah.
And if you
Particularly.
if you hire a bad vendor, your job is essentially on.
Oh, yeah,
So,
total job security.
yeah.
Or as Ricky Bobby's dad said, if you're not first, you're last.
Yep. Every time.
All right, if you guys are good, we're gonna move on, and then I'm gonna call on you guys to present out after the next workshop, if that's cool. All right, cool. So taking what you just did, I want to show you the priority pitch framework and how it works, because ultimately what this is designed to do is help you in 40 seconds or less establish trust and become a priority to your prospect. And remembering that this works when you're in front of a prospect who's not even shopping, right? Who hasn't even considered a need for your solution. So in 40 seconds or less, being able to become a priority to an ideal prospect who isn't even shopping for a solution like yours yet. So it starts with, there's really 4 processes, and this is literally what the brain goes through. So this is how it works. So you start by setting the pain. So I love this example here of like, oh my gosh, you live in an area where there's so many power outages. How frustrating is that? They're like, oh, you see me, you know me, you get me. This is so frustrating, right? It's one of the most annoying things I deal with. So we've got some trust and I'm listening. And then you establish the threat. You're a business owner. I can only imagine what it costs you when there's a power outage. You know, you lose your online store, you lose, you know, whatever, right? You name it, right? There's some real threat. And that could cause your company, right, XYZ. I mean, the real good example is the heart failure, right? Like, oh my gosh, imagine an 8-hour power outage or whatever it is. We've seen that that's, you know, the tragedy that could ensue from people that are relying on, you know, a device that requires power. And going back to like the bourbon example, right? It's like, set the pain.
Definitely the perfect
Since you like it, you know, but it's like, in this economy, with this inflation, with these tariffs, people are drinking less premium spirits, right? That market is shrinking. Frustrating, right? It's a true pain. Now, the threat, if you don't find a way to produce your bourbon for less expense and be able to reduce the price to compete in a market where people are not spending as much on spirits, your business is going to die. So you establish the threat and now they're listening. You're a priority. You've identified their pain and you're telling them there is a real consequences if you don't solve for this pain, because people will live with pain. Truly. They say that people really don't change unless the discomfort or like the threat of status quo, the threat of not changing is greater than all of the frustration and discomfort that comes with change, right? It's not good. We don't like to change. Really, as humans, we don't like to change. But we will change when we know there's a threat and our survival is at stake. So then comes the emotional lift. So the emotional lift is about making them feel like there's a way out, right? Oh my gosh, I'm scared. I'm terrified. There's a real threat. And you're like, but it's okay, because there's a way out of this. There's a real solution here that is going to make this threat go away for you. Now I'm feeling relief. I'm like, okay, all right. So now my rational brain can actually engage. But then you pull them out of that despair with that emotional lift. And your promise to perform is really here is my unique solution that will help you eliminate the threat, get rid of this pain, and create this beautiful end state for you where you can at once relax and survive and thrive, right? So this is the framework.
Thrive.
Threat. And like I said, but really the question to ask yourself is if you had 40 seconds in front of your ideal prospect who is not shopping for your solution, do you actually think you have the right pitch today to get them to lean in and say, yeah, I want that meeting. Yep. I need to learn more. And so our goal is to get there. Now, here is the priority pitch that you heard from me today, which is the biggest current threat you face is becoming a commodity. And really, while the word threat is in there, the reality is all of us can relate to being a commodity. There really is no, singular industry or category that isn't oversaturated with competitors. And we all do currently. Sound enough? The same threat, we've got these 3 deadly C's. We've got this, decision teams keep getting bigger. They're ignoring your sales team to the end of their buying journey. And really the threat continues on to this drives a race to the bottom caused by what we call the 3 deadly C's. The race won't stop on its own. And sales teams are unprepared and ill-equipped, right? So that emotional lift is really kind of combined here with the promise to perform, but we're the only group that can help you combat these 3 deadly C's. We have this framework with the right approach, the right tools, and the right skills to fight back, win your margin back, right? Not be a commodity. So that's ultimately the framework. I'm going to push it back here so you have this visually. In your workbooks, on the very back page is a picture of this. So you have these 4 stages. So our next breakout, we're going to go back into our groups, pick, start with one of the businesses, and think about how you would construct your priority pitch. It's really 40 seconds. Identify the pain, right? Level set with them. That's going to build trust. You understand what they're going through. Establish the threat. Your expertise, your insights are sharing with them that there is a real consequence, a real threat looming if they don't address this pain right away, right? Why now? Then think about how you position your emotional lift, how you start to show them there's a way out of this, right? And that promise to perform is we can not only get you eliminate this threat, but we can do these things for your business that get you to that so that you can live out your wildest dreams, right?
All right, so I'll try. So mine would be, so is this the pitch face to face or is it just what?
Yeah,
it's your.
Yeah, so 40 seconds in front of your ideal prospect. What do you say?
I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Do
Do you want feedback from the group? You want to just, throw it out there?
Let's workshop it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So in the beginning though, so it's not for a second. So again, the threats were like being stuck, being bored, not having the freedom, not productive, no relationships, no network, a trusted resource for people and services. Credibility and security, right? So instead of someone walks in like, hey, my name's Chadwick, recovering architect, small business owner. I had a shitty time looking for a place where it really worked for me, where I'm incredible, work in my own time and get the people I really trust to make my company succeed. So I'm looking for people that really are smart with their money and time, not with my time, but we've created a network where we really achieve small business enterprise to work what they want. Something like that.
So you did it. You did a good job setting the pain because you even said it. You're incredible because you lived it.
Yeah.
Here was the pain I had as a small business owner, and I imagine you feel this pain too. I think you could go deeper on establishing the threat. Like you talked about being credible. When clients would come to the office, when clients would want to meet me in person, right? I could never win their business because blah, blah, blah. I mean, but it's like there needs to be a threat that builds on top of that pain, right? And then like when you talk about the emotional lift, it's like, so I built this place that, solves for all of these problems so that this threat never happens to another small business in my community,
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Data shows 82% of business owners suffer from isolation and their businesses decline.
I totally made that up.
Sure, that's a real thing.
70% of all
Like, Matt's over here, putting everything in ChatGPT. That's your best friend, right? Like,
That's
you can even say, here's the pain my buyers feel. Give me some threats.
Businesses.
Give me some threats. Yeah, give me some data. But you know what? People remember statistics, right?
Yeah.
They'll remember, if you paint that threat vividly for them, they'll remember that. And if you throw a data point from a credible source, they'll remember that. It sticks with the brain. And that will keep them thinking and prioritizing, trying to solve this problem.
We also talked about how this model that you're building is different from a cold call than somebody that you had a relationship with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the cold call, they know nothing about you, somebody who's done business with you, and it changes, right? Because you still want to be in front of those people.
Yeah. Something we're not really covering right now, but I know it came up for you guys a bunch in terms of like, who are we talking to and how do we get in front of them, is part of the skills we develop. You actually get in front of that ideal prospect. And ideally, I mean, they could be people but oftentimes they aren't. But, there are environments, which is usually a shared network at an event, those kind of, even like a LinkedIn community, like any sort of trusted community or network, you get those 40 seconds, you can engage them and get their attention. And so when you think about where you're investing time and energy, right, instead of trying to go from the bottom up, how do you get to the top? The person whose why is biggest and who the threat is most significant for. Do you guys want to try one of your pitches? They all did their own. So much for teamwork. You want to do your?
Real quick, all right, set the pain. The biggest threat you face is continuing with status quo without the tools to grow efficiently. You're dealing with increased compliance, double-digit benefit costs, turnover, establishing the threat, increasing HR compliance over 10,000 rules and regulations in the past 5 years. Your software is inefficient and they don't talk to one another. You have trouble attracting and retaining talent. This leads to fines, turnovers, lawsuits, emotional lift. With our technology, people, resources, and tools, you're able to scale, grow, increase bottom line, giving you peace of mind, ability to sleep worry free. Promise to perform. We are partnered that will work hand in hand with you and your team from implementation to sale of company.
Really good, Alex. I think the only thing I'd probably say is there was a lot there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Scale it down.
Well, I think it depends who you're talking to. And John and I were talking about that too, because it's like, you might have more than one ideal buyer, right? Like you've got, that persona inside of those target companies that you're working towards. Like you said, you might enter through the CFO, you might enter through the HR, like the head of HR, you might enter through the founder CEO. And so what is important to them, like
So you
their
got
why
one
could be a
for
little
each of them.
nuanced. Yeah, so I'm saying instead of like trying to pack it all into one, figure out like what. So who was that delivered to?
That was trying to see.
Yeah. So I think you could, I love the sleep better at night. That's always one of my favorites, but it really is about understanding what what are they gonna latch on to and what their specific threat is. And that way you don't have to your service solves so many problems, right? But it's like, how do you really tap into the one thing that's gonna really get their attention? Once they're engaged, once you're a priority, you then have their rational brain and you can tap into all those other things, but you want your pitch as focused as possible. But really good, you worked the framework, so.
Good job, Al.
You wanna go,
All right, so partially human, partially AI driven, because I was taking notes, but then I was did ChatGPT. Anyway, most brands come to us when their growth feels chaotic, media costs are ballooning, teams are overwhelmed, and margins are slipping. At Chief of Chaos, we help you stop the bleed before it starts. Right now, you're unknowingly putting 20 to 40% of your entire budget in the middle of the road, lighting it on fire and watching it burn because your growth stack is leaking margin.
Yeah.
We're not just another agency. We come in early before your buyers even start shopping and help you create and win margin and streamline the chaos. The result, founders and leaders get to reclaim time and do something meaningful with it. For some, that's building a new division. For others, it's coaching their kids' soccer team. If you're reacting instead of scaling, you're already behind. Let's turn your chaos into cash and give you your life back.
That's great, yeah. And like we said, I still think there's
All from here.
a slight opportunity in there to kind of go deeper on the threat.
Okay,
Like, a lot of that sounds like really nice to have.
yeah,
But that primitive brain, you get the attention of the human brain and become a priority when it identifies a real threat.
like lighting your money on fire.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Money
you
on
talk
fire
about,
could
you
be-
talk about family, right? Is your wife about to leave you? Is your, I mean, whatever, right? We were talking about that.
Why,
earlier.
why, you've been talking to?
What do you know that I
You know, Hunter?
Awesome.
I think you could easily say that like most companies who file bankruptcy wish they had their marketing budget back
Oh, my God.
and be like,
Ooh, hey, there you go.
That's good.
you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Feel like they would kill to have that 20 to 40% they
Okay,
live.
yeah.
fire.
I'll check you.
Like they would, sitting in their
Yeah.
legal proceedings,
Yeah.
they're like, I wish I had that 20
Right.
to 40%
We
back.
were talking about that like as well, right? Like, what would you do with those millions of dollars that you're wasting right now, you know?
You know,
There's
there's
something-
something interesting about that, just for what it's worth. I like the visual of like lighting the money on fire in the middle of the street, but it's interesting. We even have a client like this. I used to be a procurement director for
Yeah.
a long time. It's amazing actually how much budget is not the issue. Like money, it seems like money's a good motivator,
Mhm.
but it's amazing in a lot of companies that it's really not. It's not as big a deal as you think it is. A lot of them have a lot of money or they have a lot of ways
It's
to access
not
money.
theirs.
It's not theirs.
Right.
Yeah.
It's nobody's
That's the
money.
problem.
It's the boards, it's the stock,
Yeah.
it's not theirs. Founders or somebody else, like somebody that is so personally connected to it, they might not even care about the money, they care about the reputation. I went out there and said, I'm starting this company.
Yeah,
And what's keeping me up at night is I'm gonna fail and everyone's gonna think I'm a failure.
yeah,
Those motivators are far greater
Totally.
than even lighting 50% of your money on fire.
yeah,
There's always more money out there.
yeah.
There's shame out
Especially founders believe you can always go out and get more money.
Yeah.
Reputation is a huge one.
And the fear, right,
Yeah.
reputation is.
Yeah, I don't,
Right.
I don't think cost
Bankruptcy
savings is a big one.
Huh?
I don't think cost savings is a big motivator. I really don't, because
Yeah.
What I think it is.
Panasonic right now.
And it's overdone.
Well, Panasonic right now is telling us to spend their budget before they get their next budget or they'll lose it.
Yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
throwing money,
Right.
like, they are piling it in the middle of the street, lighting it on fire and like,
Government contracts are like that too.
yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry.
No, very
But
real.
one other thing I'd like to add is just a visual that is like kind of this undiscovered gold mine,
Mhm.
which all these companies have great relationships, and loyalty and all this stuff, but it's rarely leveraged appropriately. So it's a positive thing. It's not like, hey, I'm seeing my money burning there, but hey, we've got an opportunity here that's undiscovered
Yeah.
and find ways to kind of weave that in as well.
Yeah,
You go from the material journey, like the material impact as a journey, where it's like, you might be thinking that you're gonna be losing money, but what's it worth if your brand is tarnished?
Yeah, when
Yeah.
somebody says, hey, you're gonna save a lot of money, I think, are you McDonald's?
right, there's a
Am I
distrust
getting a
there.
McDonald's
Yeah,
hamburger?
Yeah.
'Cause I prefer Del Frisco's
Right.
personally.
You're like, my taste is more
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
We're not a fit. Yeah.
Or if the market or where
Yeah.
you currently stand is important to you, do you want to be BlackBerry? Because he used to dominate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, anyone in here have BlackBerry on them?
By the
Well,
way,
and you touched upon that too, right? There's change, right? Like there's there's things that change and like that is, I think, getting left behind, especially in this like technology acceleration era with AI and everything. Like people are like, I mean, change is everything, right? Keeping up, like staying ahead,
I
right?
feel like the two of us literally kind of fell in a moment of fear watching him work on his chat. I was like, I need to learn that better because like, you know, he just,
somebody else will.
Yeah,
someone
somebody
else.
else
And
will.
Someone
against,
will do what I just did in your business.
yeah, exactly. Or are doing. it.
Yeah,
And
Probably are,
they're
yeah.
being able to do a week's worth of work in
Yeah.
a half hour
yeah,
that I'm, you know,
Totally.
staying here late. And my wife's like, why are you still at the office?
yeah.
Because I haven't learned ChatGPT well. Literally.
Yeah.
That's the answer. you know?
Exactly.
So anyway, I just fixed it. If you guys,
Of course you do.
most companies that go bankrupt, they wish they had their marketing budget back. The real pain and failure isn't just losing, it's explaining to your investors, your team, your family, that the money didn't move the needle and you wasted it.
I love that. Yes.
Good.
That
Yes.
speaks to it.
I love your team, your investors, your family.
Yeah,
That's real.
yeah, it's like, because that means literally, you tapped into it.
Yeah.
That is what keeps me up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is my reputation that Matt is, this goes into deeper fears, and I think everybody has this, is the emperor with no clothes, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, I gave him the money. He went and spent it on this marketing budget. He looked fancy and everything, and he wasted all my money and it failed.
That's it right there. I feel like if you can prove that your money's can be tracked and measurable, a lot of times it's like, yeah, we spent it as, what the fuck does that mean? But
Yeah.
like, I spent it. here,
Customers.
and this
Look,
is
we have
what
customers.
discovered. So no matter if it's still a failed experiment, you see, okay, now we can pivot here. Well, you only probably have one more chance, but that I think is something that I would buy into.
And if I can get a copy of that on something for you, I'd love to blast that out to clients.
Okay.
Not
Yeah.
Have we talked to you about our referral program?
I mean, understand what I'm saying. That's, MailChimp is great. But then I'm not trying to pitch you to them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say, hey, here's somebody who can help,
Yes,
right? I'm acting out of empathy, not out of
Yes.
a sales.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I can say, I don't want you in bankruptcy, and marketing is a major issue that is leading companies to bankruptcy. So 700 companies, be aware of this. And by the way, here's the resource that I got.
I love that. And that's how I don't want to sell. I want to solve.
Yeah, yeah,
Find a need, fill a need.
yeah. Yeah. Totally. I read something on LinkedIn yesterday that was like, I felt better about being in sales once I realized that I am bringing solutions for companies, right? To companies versus like, it's like you're solving a problem
Yeah.
versus pitching to you,
Well, the problem is everybody has their backup.
Yeah.
And the minute that you come in and they know you're a vendor, whether you are a salesperson or a founder or whatever, they go, he's gonna sell me. Oh God, he's gonna sell me. And
Yeah.
people, we've been on the phone, I'm thinking of Charlie. We've been on the phone where they're like, hey, I can spot PS a mile away. You're like, I don't even talk yet.
Yeah.
But that's,
The distrust in marketers. We were talking about that too.
yeah.
Nobody
it's-
trusts marketing.
What was the stats? Like consulting and marketing agencies are the least trusted professionals.
Yeah, well, we were talking about this, there's a stat that like, especially founders, CEOs,
Used car sales.
yeah, oh my God.
Yeah,
That's
that's
funny.
lower. It's like an 18% trust in marketing.
Yeah,
agencies.
totally, yeah.
We're the lawyers.
Cleaning our shoes.
I take back my question. I was trying to.
Just above extended warranties. Extended warranty.
Oh.
That's funny.
That's a pretty good Colorado. That's it.
Well, you guys have been awesome. I appreciate, I know this ran a little long, but I appreciate all the time. You worked really hard, so you all deserve some recognition and hopefully you gained something valuable to take back to your businesses.